Hi everyone, my name is Kaitlyn Kibbe and today I will be sharing with you my Diverse Learners project. To begin, this science lesson will be taught in a first grade classroom in a low socioeconomic inner city area. There are 18 culturally and linguistically diverse students. More specifically, there are 10 girls and 8 boys that are between the ages of 6 and 7. The class consists of mostly white, Hispanic, African American, Guatemalan, and Caucasian students. The majority of them speak Spanish as their native language. Students are at a variety of developmental levels, which requires me to accommodate my lesson to their level of knowledge. Furthermore, 2 students have ADHD, and many students are struggling socio-emotionally. Overall, the class is very diverse and unique, which required me to alter my lesson plans to meet their individual needs. My lesson plan allows students to explore and carry out investigations. So first, students will be separated into groups and provided a bag filled with 9 objects, and they have to categorize them: translucent, transparent, or opaque. They will utilize flashlights to help them determine if the light is able to pass through an object. To determine students' knowledge at the end of the lesson, they will write an example of an object that they used in their experiment for each term and explain why that object is translucent, transparent, or opaque. Next, I will provide a brief overview of the 4 students. To begin, Carlos is a 6-year-old Hispanic boy. His Hispanic culture values collectivism. He is really fluent in Spanish, however, he's struggling and adapting with learning the English language. He enjoys hands-on learning to assist him with his language development, and he is at a WIDA level 1 for reading, writing, listening, and speaking. For Fatima, she is a Guatemalan girl. She speaks English along with her family. She comes from a high-context collectivist society. She also has a developmental disorder called autism, so she struggles to communicate and is nonverbal. So she utilizes a Go Talk, which has 45 buttons with pre-recorded messages that she can press when she wants to communicate, so the teacher can pre-record terms and sentences to help the student. She is also developmentally delayed, which means she's behind grade level in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. She can physically write, however, that is limited. In addition, she is on an IEP, which requires her to have a paraprofessional. My next student is Jose. He is a 6-year-old Hispanic boy. His family values collectivism and places an importance on working with family. In addition, he has ADHD, so he struggles to focus in class, but he is really intelligent. His doctors have been trying to figure out medications, however, they have not yet found something that works for him. So he is at appropriate grade level for reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Lastly, Miguel has immigrated from Puerto Rico. His family speaks fluent Spanish. He has just come to the United States because his family's home was destroyed by Hurricane Maria, so he is a student with limited or interrupted formal education. So due to this, he is extremely sensitive and emotional, and he is at a WIDA level 1 in all areas. To begin, my content objective is students will use various objects provided to carry out investigations in order to help them determine and explain the differences between translucent, transparent, and opaque. My writing objective is students will write an example of an object they used in their experiment for each term and explain why that object is translucent, transparent, and opaque. My reading objective is students will be able to read their writing responses to peers in their assigned groups. My speaking objective is students will discuss among their groups by using vocabulary terms and other English terminology in order to sort the objects into categories. And finally, my listening objective is students will listen to their peers explain their writing by making eye contact, staying focused, and being respectful to the speaker. The first material that I included was a vocabulary term sheet. So these are for all students that include the 3 vocabulary words, which are translucent, transparent, and opaque, and their definitions to support them. This will help students when they're also writing their examples. So for Carlos and Miguel, the vocabulary words will be provided in English and Spanish, so the both languages allow them to make connections, and it also helps them to eliminate that language barrier and be supported with the visuals. My next material was the 4 bags of materials, so I have all those materials listed below. And these will help students experiment and explore the differences between translucent, transparent, and opaque. So these materials support all students' learning. For Miguel and Carlos, I will have word cards in English and Spanish that represent those terms to help them remember. And for Fatima and Jose, since they both enjoy hands-on learning, this will help them grow. I will also provide word cards for Fatima in English to help to support her developmental delays. The next material is a chart. So this chart is divided into 3 categories, which were translucent, transparent, and opaque. And they have to write the names of the objects in the bag under each category. So for Miguel and Carlos, I'll provide them with pictures that they can glue into the categories. And for Fatima and Jose, they will write the words in the categories, and they may also reference those word cards if necessary. Lastly, I have a writing worksheet. So after sorting the activity, students will demonstrate their knowledge through writing. They must write one example of the object or material for each property and explain why that is an example. So for Carlos and Miguel, I have modified the writing piece so they only have to write if the object is translucent, transparent, and opaque. The instructions and everything will be in English and Spanish to help eliminate that language barrier. For Fatima, it's a simplified version of the assessment in order to meet her developmental delays. And for Jose, I will provide him with assessment that pushes him intellectually and keeps him engaged. For my content objective, I will activate students' background knowledge regarding forms of light. This means I will explain the vocabulary terms, I'll pass out the vocabulary sheets for them to reference, I will split them into groups and give them the 9 materials in the bag, and they have to use those flashlights to work together, and finally they'll fill in a chart. So for Miguel and Carlos, they'll have to glue pictures and use the words cards to help them practice writing in English. For Fatima, I will program her Go Talk with terms and phrases, that way she's able to participate. And finally, for Jose, since he has ADHD, I will make him my assistant and really keep him engaged and excited about the lesson. In terms of my writing objective, so after the activity, students will demonstrate their knowledge through writing. So for Carlos and Miguel, the instructions in the writing will be in English and Spanish to help eliminate that language barrier. For Fatima, since she's unable to write in complete sentences, this writing piece will only require her to write words and then answer multiple choice questions. And finally, for Jose, I will provide an assessment that pushes him intellectually and requires him to determine his own examples in order to help him engaged. For my reading objective, once students have completed their writing piece, they'll split into groups and read what they have written. So for Carlos and Miguel, I will put them in a group that is supportive and really makes them feel comfortable. So they'll point to each image on the worksheet and say if their object is translucent, transparent, and opaque. And then a student in their group will read the phrases in English and they have to attempt to try and repeat that. For Fatima, I will have her Go Talk program so that she can press the correct button in order to communicate. And for Jose, he will simply read his examples since he is at appropriate levels. The next objective is my speaking objective. So after students have sorted the objects, it will help them facilitate discussion and communication. So for Carlos and Miguel, their goal is to attempt to say the words in English and their peers will assist them. For Fatima, she'll use her Go Talk in order to communicate and help students give her input and complete the chart. And for Jose, he will be the leader of his group to help keep him engaged, so he will be in charge of taking all the objects out of the bag and making sure that his group stays on task. Finally, my last objective is my listening objective. So students will show that they're actively listening by making eye contact, staying focused, and being respectful. So for Carlos and Miguel, since they're behind developmentally and linguistically, they can put their thumbs up if they understand or thumbs down if they're confused, so this will help them make sure that their classmates are assisting them and they're having an equal opportunity to participate. For Fatima, she is nonverbal, so she will show that she's listening by nodding and smiling, and she can also press her good job button on her Go Talk. And for Jose, he will complete a checklist of his group members. The last part of this project was assessment of students' learning, so I decided to assess the reading and writing domains. I understand that my assessment needed to be modified in order to meet the needs of all my students and avoid any cultural biases. So for Jose, I allowed him to create his own writing piece regarding the directions that were explained, so he was provided a little more freedom in order to keep him engaged. For Miguel and Carlos, the assessment was delivered in English and Spanish and was very simplified. And for Fatima, I created an assessment that met her level of writing skills. So she only had to write a few words and complete a multiple choice section. And finally, I programmed her Go Talk in order to allow her to communicate and meet that reading domain. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.